Welcome to Wednesday night Bible class at Ray of Hope. We are in the book of Nehemiah. Before we start, a couple of things. Pastor has allowed me a 3-month sabbatical after tonight. I have a 10-year medical board exam in 3 months, first Wednesday in November. It's an all-day exam, and it's pretty intense. It kind of covers all the stuff that's new over the last 10 years in my field of medicine. And so I'll be doing lots of studying for that over the next 3 months. So we will resume Nehemiah when I come back in November. And Pastor will have other folks teaching in my stead. So appreciate your understanding of that. Okay, before we start the lesson, I don't know how many of y'all saw the Western with Tom Hanks last year called News of the World. Pretty good Western. Tonight I've got a couple of items from News of the Weird. Okay, both of these came across the business page this week. A woman is suing McDonald's after claiming a cheeseburger advertisement made her break her fast during Lent. Kesnia Ornichakova said she hadn't eaten meat in a month until she saw the advertisement from McDonald's, and it made her give in. So she's suing the Russian. The Russian is suing the McDonald's for $14 as compensation for moral damage. She said she's an Orthodox Christian. She had vowed to stay away from meat and other animal products during the 6-week period leading up to Easter. And she had abstained for a full month until she watched this commercial. So she says, I just simply could not stop myself. I went to McDonald's and bought a cheeseburger. So she's accusing the fast food franchise of breaking the consumer protection laws and insulting her religious feelings. So she's suing McDonald's for 1,000 rubles, which is $14, as compensation for sustained moral damage. McDonald's refused request for comment. Okay, so yeah, I thought since this is ranching country, I'd brief a couple of news of the weird from about beef. Okay, next one. Okay. And a single cow can belch 220 pounds of methane a year. It's a short-lived but potent greenhouse gas. Since there are close to 1 billion cattle on the planet and the number of cows is expected to grow, this is going to affect global warming. So the CEO of Zelt, a British-based startup company, has designed a mask that fits on the cow's nose to capture the methane emissions directly. It will act like a catalytic converter on a car to convert the methane into carbon dioxide and water vapor. So, farmers and ranchers, you might be first in line to get that catalytic converter for your cow. Cows, not Steve? Steve, it doesn't look like Steve's going to get in line. Okay, news of the weird. Okay, let's get serious now. Nehemiah. Okay, we always start with a little recap of the past few lessons to kind of bring you up to date, show you where we are in the lesson. We kind of started this whole series is kind of the end of the history of the Old Testament. So we did Ezra, then we did Esther, now we're doing Nehemiah. Ezra actually started about 478 years BC, but before Christ. And that's when King Cyrus of Persia allowed the first group to go back to Judea after the 70-year captivity. And then about 20 years later, in that first group rebuilt the temple that had been destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar. 20 years later, Ezra takes a group back. And now as we start Nehemiah, we're 12 years after that, so we're about 446 years BC. Nehemiah is the cupbearer to the king Artaxerxes, the king of Persia, and his brother Hananiah apparently had gone to Judea 12 years previously with Ezra's group, and he comes back and begs Nehemiah, who's simply a servant of the king. It's not like he's some wealthy person. but begs him to get the king to give provisions so that they can rebuild the wall around Jerusalem for the protection of themselves and the protection of the temple. So after 4 months of praying and fasting, Nehemiah approaches the king. He agrees. He even gives a military escort for this 4-month journey back. And so Nehemiah leads a group back. And then as he arrives, we are introduced to the antagonist of the story, Sanballat and Tobiah. And we're going to see that they're going to continually oppose the rebuilding of the wall and oppose Nehemiah and his leadership. Chapter 3, we looked at those who volunteered to help rebuild the wall, and it also names that some refused to volunteer. And then Nehemiah described the walls and the gates, and the third chapter of Nehemiah is the best archaeological description of ancient Jerusalem in the Bible, and modern archaeology has proven that to be 100% correct. Chapter 4, the antagonists, Sanballat and Tobiah, just repeatedly kept trying to discourage the Jews and their rebuilding of the wall. And Nehemiah showed us 4 great ways to defend and work against discouragement. Then the last lesson was chapter 5, and we learned how Nehemiah used his influence in handling promotions, privileges, policies, projects, and people. Tonight we're going to look at chapter 6. We're calling this the battle that never ends, the never-ending battle. So if you've ever thought, well, if I'm a Christian, if I study enough, I pray enough, I become a mature Christian enough, then I won't have to worry about Satan. I won't have to worry about the enemy. Well, I hate to discourage you, but you're sadly mistaken if you think he's ever going to quit. He is never going to quit, and we're going to see how that works in this chapter here. So let's look at verse 1 of chapter 6. Everybody have a lesson sheet? If you don't, raise your hand. Okay, so the verses are on the lesson sheet. Tonight we're looking at the New Living Translation. Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem the Arab, and the rest of our enemies found out that I had finished rebuilding the wall and that no gaps remained, though we had not yet set up the doors in the gates. So here we go. This is actually the 4th time in this book. Here we are in the 6th chapter. These 2 guys appear again. They just won't go away. And what they see is that their window of derailing this building project is coming to an end. The window is closing because the Jews have been successful in rebuilding the walls. They just haven't got the gates up yet. And so once more, they're coming against the Jews. And so as Christians, when people attack us, it's easy to assume that they are the enemy. But we have to realize the power behind them. We have to realize that in reality, people are not our problem. As Christians, we have to learn to view the world, the physical world, with spiritual eyes. Because our real enemy is in the spiritual realm. Our real battle is in the spiritual realm. Now, yes, the enemy can use people in the physical realm to carry out that battle, but we need to look beyond that and realize that our battle in this life as Christians that we've signed up for as disciples is in the spiritual realm. I've written down a verse there, Ephesians 6 and 12. This is where Apostle Paul talks about this battle. For we're not fighting against flesh and blood enemies, but against evil rulers and authorities of the unseen world, against mighty powers in this dark world, and against evil spirits in the heavenly places. So just as the powers of the dark world opposed Nehemiah and the Jews in rebuilding the wall, they are just as active today. They haven't gone away. They are still here. And so when we are a child of God, we will find ourselves in this, what we call never-ending battle. And the enemy uses willing people to help carry out this battle against us. Last lesson, we talked about how more people fail in the test of success than they fail in the test of adversity. Most people in adversity really rise to the occasion and are successful. Whereas a lot of people, when they become successful in life in some area, they actually fail because they get proud. And so Paul tells us in 1 Corinthians 10:12, if you think you're standing strong, be careful not to fall. Because when you become successful in something, you start feeling self-sufficient. And when you feel self-sufficient, you don't feel like you need God. And you probably all know people like that. You know, there's people in this world that just feel like that they got it going on and they've been successful in this world, so what do they need God for? That's really easy to get to thinking that way. So anyway, I believe that here at this situation in our story, Sanballat and Tobiah are kind of thinking, okay, well, you know, we've been pestering and prodding and discouraging these Jews, but now they've got the wall finished. It's 52 days they built this humongous wall all the way around Jerusalem. And so actually they're feeling pretty good about themselves right now, so maybe this is the time we can just kind of press on with our opposition because they're feeling successful, so maybe they're more primed to fail now because they're feeling successful. Okay, verse 2. So Sanballat and Geshem sent a message asking me, this is Nehemiah, to meet them at one of the villages in the plain of Ono. But I realized they were plotting to harm me. The English Standard Version, the one I usually use, says, they said to me, come, let us meet together. So they send a private message through a messenger to Nehemiah saying, come, let us meet together in the plain of Ono. The plain of Ono is a beautiful valley 20 miles north of Jerusalem. So 20 miles north is a hard day's walk. So, you know, you don't get in a car and drive back then, you walk. So they're trying to get him away from the people that would protect him, and he realizes that. So it is kind of like they're saying, okay, Nehemiah, you know, your walls are up, your job's almost finished, you've been working too hard, you know, come to this plain of Ono, and we'll have a little R&R, a little rest and relaxation, and we can be friends. Come on, let's be friends. But Nehemiah's answer to come to Ono is, oh, no. So he knew they were scheming to harm him. So how did he know that? Well, when you have the Spirit of God living in you and you're not quenching the Spirit will give you discernment of the opportunities that come your way to know the right choice, to whether to go with it or to go against it. And so the problem is, in our heeding to the Spirit, is we also have the flesh talking to us. And you see, Nehemiah thought, I've been on a long journey all the way from Persian capital. We've been working hard. This would be a great opportunity just to get away and go to this place of rest and relaxation, and maybe I can make friends with him. And so that would be the flesh talking to him. But instead, his spirit, he listened to the Spirit within, and we're going to see what he says. Verse 3. So I replied by sending this message to them. I am engaged in a great work, so I can't come. Why should I stop working to come and meet with you? So one of the ways that the enemy works against us is through interruptions and distractions. He's trying to make it hard for us to focus on our work for the Lord. I don't know about you in your quiet times, but I have one of our extra bedrooms, I have a place where I do my quiet time and I do my Bible study. And I shut the door and I try to cut out distractions. The biggest distraction, if I take it in there, is a cell phone. So, I've learned to leave my cell phone out of there if I don't want to get distracted. That's just, cell phones can be good, but they also can be distractions when you're trying to focus on something that's doing great work for the Lord. So Nehemiah is saying here, I'm doing a great work, I cannot stop. So let me tell you tonight, any work you do for the Lord is a great work. Yeah. You don't have to be up in front of a group. You can be in the kitchen cooking. You can be driving a bus. You can be on the security team. Anything you're doing in ministry work, or even on an individual work, one-on-one, in influencing someone for the Lord is a great work. Kathy gave me a book several years ago of Chuck Swindoll's sermon illustrations, and I like it. It's by topic, and I found this really good one for this one. Swindoll says, I once read of a young missionary in China prior to World War II. So this is back in the 1930s, a missionary to China. He was a recent university graduate, just 28 years old. He was fluent in Mandarin Chinese, and he was a proven leader. An American oil company wanted to open a new operation in China, and it planned to open its main office in the same city where this young man lived. When company officials became aware that this young missionary was there, who could speak Mandarin Chinese, they offered him a position in their company at 10 times the salary he was getting as a missionary. The oil company executives were shocked when he turned down their generous offer. So they went back to him with an even larger offer. He turned that offer down as well. They came back a third time with an even bigger offer. Again, he declined. Finally, the executives asked him, "What will you take?" The missionary said, "You don't understand. It's not that the salary is too little. It's that your job is too small." So any work you do for God is a great work. Now, the problem we have as Christians is not that we're going around doing bad things. We're doing a lot of good things. There was a book written about 20 years ago by Jim Collins. It was actually a business book, but it applies to all areas of life. It's called From Good to Great. And the problem that a lot of us have, I myself, is that we can get so focused on doing things that are good that we don't have time for the great things. And the great things is the work of the Lord. And so, if you don't have time in your schedule to do some work for the Lord in some way, you need to make some time by spending less time on some of the good things you're doing and exchange it for a great work, like what Nehemiah was talking about here. Okay, verse 4. 4 times they sent the same message. Each time I gave the same reply. So 4 times they say, they send a messenger 4 different times. It's not like they texted him or called him. They had to send a messenger. 4 times, come and have some rest and relaxation. This great, beautiful plain of Ono. They just wouldn't give up. 4 times Nehemiah said, "Oh, no, I'm not going." And so they keep distracting. The enemy keeps tempting. They keep interrupting. The battle never ends. So after 4 times, does it say the enemy gives up? No. He changes tactics. And see, that's what the enemy does in our life too. If you resist him one way over and over and over, don't think he's going away. He'll come at you another direction. Verse 5. The 5th time, Sanballat's servant came with an open letter in his hand. So the first 4 invitations were closed. It was a messenger to Nehemiah that only he heard. And so that didn't work. So now Sanballat kind of ups the ante by sending an open letter that others know about. So let me ask you a question. I don't know if you've ever been in any kind of organization where you were dealt in sales. A lot of home-based businesses deal in sales. Maybe you worked in sales. But if you ever had sales training, I've heard this myself. The most sales are made after you've asked the client for the sale 5 times. Right? Have you heard that before? 5 times. And so a successful salesman, if you ever dealt with one from the buyer standpoint, a really good salesman just won't take no for an answer. They keep coming at you from different directions. Have you ever, when I think of unpleasant experiences in my life, I think about times when I've been a sucker to answer the ad for, we'll give you a three-day, 2-night free vacation. All you have to do is come to a little 90-minute, no-pressure presentation about a vacation ownership. Ever done that before? Oh, yeah. Look at all the hands going up. I think they train barracudas for timeshare sales. I tell you what, those guys are just unbelievable. Unbelievable. You know, you go in there thinking, you know, for an hour before you go, you practice shaking your head no, you know. But it just, man alive. Anyway, so Sanballat and Tobiah are kind of like the barracudas of the timeshare salesman. They will not take no for an answer. So here they come a 5th time. I guess they've been to sales training, thinking, okay, we're going to get him this time. This is the hook. This is the hook. So they use an open letter, so that what they're trying to do is get public pressure against Nehemiah. So let's see what the letter says. Now, I forgot to put verse 6 on the lesson sheet, so let me read that to you, and then we'll read to verse 7 on the lesson sheet. This is what the letter said. There is a rumor, remember the word rumor, there's a rumor among the surrounding nations, and Geshem tells me it's true, that you and the Jews are planning to rebel, and that's why you're building the wall. According to his reports, you plan to be their king. And then verse 7, it is reported, remember those words, it is reported that you have appointed prophets in Jerusalem to proclaim about you, look, there's a king in Judah. You can be very sure that this report will get back to the king, meaning Artaxerxes of Persia. So I suggest you come and talk it over with me. So that's the open letter. So you can kind of read between the lines. He's saying, Nehemiah, since you haven't fallen for my first 4 invitations, I'm going to expose your true motives. You're on a power trip. You're doing this because you're going to revolt against Persia. You want to be the king, and I'm going to report you to King Artaxerxes. And if you don't want me to do that, you'll come up to me to plain Ono. So you notice that it starts out, there's a rumor, and then he says, it is reported. You know, it's interesting that rumors and gossip tend to never really have a true source. Have you ever noticed that? Have you ever tried to chase down a rumor or chase down gossip and find out where it came from? You'll never get to the bottom. You'll never find it. It's kind of out there in the wind somewhere. But you know, there's something about humans, you know, our psychology that, you know, it's just kind of exciting to kind of pass on something negative about somebody else, you know, from a fleshly standpoint. You know, it's kind of like it makes us feel better about ourselves if we can kind of run somebody else down. And so when we hear something negative about somebody, it's so tempting just to pass it on because I think it's because it makes us feel better about ourselves. Anyway, so it's kind of a twisted thing, but what's really, and notice this, often as Christians, you know, when we're tempted to do that, the way we kind of lie to ourselves that it's okay is we say, I'm going to tell you about something and we need to pray about it. You know, so you pass on a rumor or gossip about somebody and say, but we need to pray about that. You know, but we're just lying to ourselves. We're really just enjoying the rumor or the gossip. Well, as you know, rumors and gossip rarely have the source. It's always anonymous. And I don't know if you ever got an anonymous letter. I have. I know Pastor has. And another illustration out of Swindoll's illustration book's pretty good. It says, I heard a story about a man who was speaking before an audience, and someone in the audience passed a note up to the platform. The speaker stopped his speech, unfolded the note, and saw that it had one word written on it. Fool. So the speaker turned to the audience and said, I have received many unsigned messages and letters before, but this is the first time I've ever received a note from someone who signed his name but forgot to write a message. That's pretty good, isn't it? Anyway, so this attack is public criticism. Remember, we talked about this a couple lessons ago. Very important lesson. About criticism. When criticism that could be given privately is given publicly, it's meant to tear you down. When criticism is given publicly, I said that backwards. When criticism is given publicly that could be given privately, it's meant to tear you down. When criticism is given privately, when it could be given publicly, they're trying to help you. So here you have, in this instance here, Sanballat has gone public because the private messages, weren't responded to like he wanted to. So he's gone public with this rumor and gossip and criticism because he's trying to tear Nehemiah down. Okay, verse 8. I replied, there is no truth in any part of your story. You're making up the whole thing. So Nehemiah is saying, Sanballat, I don't listen to trash talk. You and I both know what you're saying is not true. Sometimes you just have to call a spade a spade. Sometimes you have to call people out and say, look, you're just not telling the truth. When I was thinking about this for the lesson, I reminded those of you who are older remember, and men may remember the first early few years of Monday Night Football. And it was extremely popular. And I guess it's still popular today. I don't really watch it at all now. But what was popular about it was not the football, but was the sportscasters. And you had three guys. Sitting in the middle was Frank Gifford, and he was kind of the referee. Then over on this side, you had Don Meredith, who had used to be a quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, and he was from Mount Pleasant, Texas. He was a good old boy, and he just liked to rag on the third guy, who was Howard Cosell, who was a New York Jew. And Howard Cosell was just insufferable. Anyway, and so it was just entertainment. Oh, Don Meredith, he'll get to the fourth quarter, and one team be way ahead, and Don Meredith starts singing, turn out the lights, the party's over, and then Howard Cosell, was just, in 1 year, he was tops in two polls. One was the most loved sportscaster, the most hated sportscaster. Half of the world loved him, half the world hated him. Anyway, but my favorite critic of criticism of Howard Cosell was, one guy said, here's a guy, talking about Howard Cosell, who changed his name because he was Howard Cohen, which is a real Jewish name. He changed his name, he got a facelift, and he's wearing a toupee so he could tell it like it is. That was his byline. I tell it like it is. But I changed my name, got a facelift, and wear a toupee so I can tell it like it is. Anyway, so in our story here, Nehemiah is saying, okay, Sanballat, I'm going to tell it like it is. You're telling a lie. You're not telling the truth. Verse 9. They were just trying to intimidate us, imagining that they could discourage us and stop the work. So I continued the work with even greater determination. So Nehemiah shows us the proper response to rumor and gossip. He's saying, God, don't let us get discouraged by these false words that are meant to hurt us. And he's saying that because words can hurt. I mean, he's honest. He's saying, it's not like he wasn't hurt by any of this stuff. He's just trying to realize what it is. Consider the source, consider the truth, but still words can hurt, and words can discourage. I mean, think back at your lifetime, your entire lifetime. Are there things you remember now from years and years ago that people said to you that were hurtful then and they're still kind of hurtful now? I'm sure you can. Most of us can, because those kind of things stick with you. I got glasses in the second grade. I was the only kid in class with glasses for several years. And then, by fifth grade, we were running races. I was the slowest in the class, so I became the four-eyed turtle. And that nickname, everybody called me that. I was kind of that for several years till I changed schools. I still remember that today, I wish I could run faster. I wish I didn't have glasses, but that's just the way it was. you know. So words can hurt. And so Nehemiah is saying here, you've got to understand that words can hurt, so you've got to kind of put up the deflection and say, okay, I'm not going to let that happen because I realize those words are not true. Those words are hurtful and discouraging. James 3 and 6, there on your lesson sheet. Among all the parts of the body, the tongue is a flame of fire. It is a whole world of wickedness, corrupting your entire body. It can set your whole life on fire, for it is set on fire by hell itself. And so certainly words can hurt us, but certainly we need to watch out because our words can hurt somebody else. Realize the power of the tongue. The power of the tongue. See, Sanballat and Tobiah had not raised a hand against Nehemiah at this point. All this is words. All this is words. And they're just trying to destroy him with words. And we can destroy people with words. Okay, so at this point in the story, the enemies have sent 4 invitations privately to Nehemiah to try to isolate him, and then Nehemiah assumes they're going to try to harm him in the valley of Ono. That didn't work. So now they send an open letter with rumor and gossip. That didn't work. So that's 5 times. You think the battle's over? The never-ending battle. Let's see what weapons and what tactic the enemy uses next. Verse 10. Later I went to visit Shemaiah, son of Delilah, and grandson of Methabel, who was confined to his home. He said, "Let us meet together inside the temple of God and bolt the door shut. Your enemies are coming to kill you tonight." So Nehemiah goes to the home of Shemaiah. We don't really know why, but apparently he's known as a prophet. The book says he was confined to his home, and I wondered if that meant he was disabled or shut in, so I kind of looked back at the original language to see what that meant, and it basically means he was kind of he chose to say shut in, say for religious reasons. It's like he considered himself like a monk. So he stayed in his home. Anyway, so for some reason Nehemiah goes to his home, and Shemaiah says, "The enemy is coming to kill you tonight, so let's go hide in the temple." Now, if someone told you that, if you knew you had true enemies, and you knew they really wanted you dead, and someone that you respected told you they're coming to kill you tonight, how would you feel? Now, we're kind of blessed in our modern society, and we have really good door locks. We have security lights. Some of us have security systems. Back then they didn't have all that stuff. And so there was a real reason for Nehemiah to be afraid. It made me think back to my time in the Nigerian jungle as a medical missionary. The compound where we lived, the hospital, and there were a few houses around. We weren't about a half a mile from the other houses. And we had a generator that worked from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. After 10 p.m., no electricity. And so the only light you had was if you had a flashlight, or we had some kerosene lamps. And we were told when we went there that thieves like to steal from missionaries. They weren't going to hurt you unless you tried to hurt them, but they would like, our doors had these skeleton key locks that were really, I think one key would fit everybody's door. But they'd say while you're sleeping, they would sneak in, and they'd be very quiet. So what they would do, they told us, is they said they would be naked, and they will cover their bodies with grease. So if you try to capture them, you'll just slip off. But basically, they're looking for things that they can steal, that they can go, sell and make money, because missionaries would have things that the regular villagers would not have. And sure enough, while we were there was a single American nurse that lived about a half mile from us in her house by herself, and sure enough, that happened to her. One morning, she woke up and a bunch of her stuff was gone, and there were some greasy footprints on the concrete floor. of course, then you feel violated. Thankfully, they didn't hurt her, didn't try to hurt her, and she didn't even know that they were there. But just the thought of somebody being in your house while you're sleeping. But here it's even worse. It's not like Nehemiah, they're going to come in your house and steal your stuff. It's Nehemiah, they want to come kill you. So let's go hide in the temple and bolt the doors. So let's see what his response was. Verse 11 through 14. I replied, should someone in my position run from danger? Should someone in my position enter the temple to save his life? No, I won't do it. I realized that God had not spoken to him, talking about Shemaiah, but that he had uttered this prophecy against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. They were hoping to intimidate me and make me sin. Then they would be able to accuse and discredit me. Verse 14. Remember, so he's praying to God, remember, O my God, all the evil things Tobiah and Sanballat have done. Remember Nodiah the prophet and all the prophets like her who also tried to intimidate me. Okay, so Nehemiah responds in a way that shows he knows the word of the Lord. He knows immediately by what Shemaiah the prophet said, he's working for the wrong side because of what he said. And he knew that because he knew the word of the Lord. He knew that God forbid anyone who's not a priest to go in the temple. So he knew Shemaiah was working for the other side. So here's a good question for us. A lot of opportunities come to us in our lifetime. How do we know what God's will is for our life? Well, a very good first step is, do you know the Bible, which is God's revealed will? If you know what God tells us in the Bible, it will help you discern truth from false. That's exactly what happened here with Nehemiah. He could respond because he knew what God's will was based on what he knew of the Scriptures. And so by Nehemiah knowing God's Scriptures, he figured out very quickly that Shemaiah was working for the wrong team. And then in verse 14, Nehemiah doesn't plan personally to take revenge against Sanballat and Tobiah. He prays for God to avenge him. He prays for God to settle the accounts of what these guys have been doing. Verse 15 and 16. So on October the 2nd, the wall was finished, just 52 days after we had begun. When our enemies and the surrounding nations heard about it, they were frightened and humiliated. They realized this work had been done with the help of our God. The enemies realized that this work had been done with the help of our God. Even the enemies of Israel had to admit that God was at work for his people because of this magnificent, great work that had been finished in 52 days. Rebuilding the wall and the gates of Jerusalem, and that was in spite of constant opposition. One of the chapters says while they were working, because of the fear, they would work with one hand and they'd hold their weapon with the other hand. So they're working one-handed. And yet they still finished in 52 days. So it had to be because God's supernatural power was with them. So it says the enemies realized they were not just battling the Jews. The enemies realized they'd been battling God himself, and they lost. They were humiliated. Who can overcome the power of the creator of the universe? So, to me, that's a beautiful picture of what our life can be of the Christian faith. I'm sure you've heard someone say, something happened to them and they can't explain it humanly. They say, that's a God thing. I love it when people say that. It's like you're realizing that God's at work today, that there's things that happen today that we cannot explain. There's people that are healed today that doctors cannot explain. There's things that happen, circumstances that happen that God had to be at work. And so if you realize it, I promise you the enemy realizes it too. Our enemy realizes that God is at work in your life when you're a child of His and you're yielding to His Spirit. Doesn't mean He's going to quit trying. Never-ending battle. But he realizes that God is with you and working in your life. Verse 17 through 19. During those 52 days, many letters went back and forth between Tobiah and the nobles of Judah. So during those 52 days, besides what we've learned about so far, all the different times that Tobiah and Sanballat have tried to stop the work, Nehemiah saying, on top of all this, Tobiah sent many, many, many letters to other leaders in Judah. For many in Judah had sworn allegiance to him because his father-in-law was Shechaniah, son of Era, and his son Jehaniah was married to the daughter of Meshullam, son of Berechiah. So Tobiah and his son had both married Jewesses. So they were intermarried. They were some of this intermarriage that we've talked about before. And so they kind of had an end to some of the Jews. And so they were trying to influence Nehemiah from the inside, not just from the outside. And that's how the enemy works. The enemy can work among people that are your friends or fellow co-workers or family. He'll find any way he can, any crack he can to get in, because it's a never-ending battle. You can't turn your back on him. So the bottom line is, as long as you're a Christian, as long as you are breathing, you know, when you get 80 years old, you don't get a free pass. When you get 90 years old, you don't get a free pass. As long as you have a heartbeat or breathing, the enemy is going to be coming out to you from every angle he can think of. And so it's kind of like Winston Churchill told the British people in World War II, so we must never, 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 never give up. This is a spiritual battle. We've got to look at our world through spiritual eyes and realize that the powers of evil are against us. They do not want us succeeding. They do not want us showing the power of God in our lives or in our circumstances. So anything they can do to slow us down and discredit us, to destroy us, they will do it. 1 Peter 5:8. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Now let me ask you this. Let's say you find someone to devour. Is he satisfied? Let's say you eat a meal tonight. Are you hungry tomorrow? Same thing with the devil. He prowls around like a roaring lion. He may find someone to devour, but tomorrow he's going to be hungry again. He's never satisfied. He's always going to be looking out for us, and we've got to realize. Now, the good news is, of course, we know the enemy is already defeated. And he knows that. But, you know, he's just looking for folks to take with him to eternal punishment. So the never, never ending battle. So let's stay vigilant and never get complacent.